Welcome back to HQ Spotlight on this mock draft Monday. That's right, we're counting down the days, 24 to be exact, until the 2025 NFL Draft from Lambeau Field. And after a pretty busy free agency, of course, we had the pro days that are underway and the combine. We have some movement in our latest mock draft. We will be with you the next hour as we welcome in our own Emory Hunt and Ryan Wilson. I'm Jordan Giorgio to the show in our CBS Sports HQ studios. We're going to go ahead and predict every single first round draft with the draft less than a month away. Gentlemen, it is so great to see you. It's certainly not your first rodeo with this, but for everyone watching at home, we'll go through about 8 picks at a time here. And Emory, we begin with the Titans, who hold the #1 overall pick. And at this point, it really feels like they're either staying at 1 and taking Cam Ward or trading out. What do you have them doing?
Yeah, I'm going to go chalk here and go along with everybody and give them Cam Ward, even though I would have Shedeur Sanders #1. But for the sake of this mock draft, let's give them Cam Ward, because to me, he reminds me a lot of a guy that used to wear that former Tennessee Titans uniform, and Steve McNair, the way he plays the game and how he manages the pocket and what he can do off script, and coming from the FCS via the the transfer portal and all of those things he's done. He's a terrific prospect to me. Would have gone first round, top 5, top 10 in any draft class. So this one, he goes #1.
All right. Ryan, your reaction to that?
You know, it's funny, Jordan, I spent a lot of time with Emory, especially the last few months, and I still like spending time with him, but sometimes he says some things I disagree with. I'm glad he's coming around on Cam Ward first overall. And here's the thing, Emory mentioned it, he does like Shedeur a little better, and that's fine, because at the end of the day, Jordan, we have no idea what's going to happen 3 or 4 years from now. Zach Wilson was a high-round draft pick. Trey Lance was a high-round draft pick, and so was Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow ended up being the best of the group, even though he had to leave Ohio State to LSU and make his name there. So I think Cam Ward is a better player as we sit here, mostly on the physical side. But we have a pro day coming up on Friday in Colorado, Jordan, for Shedeur Sanders to make his case one last time down the home stretch here.
Yeah, Emory, to be honest with you, I was hoping for a juicy pick, but we'll stick with Cam Ward like all the other mock drafts have out there. And Ryan, let's get to the second pick in the upcoming NFL draft, which the Browns hold. And you believe another QB will be off the board. Tell me why Shedeur Sanders makes sense here.
So I think our buddy Pete Prisco is at the league meetings as we speak. And earlier today, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam said, hey, man, we made a mistake trading and giving all that money to Deshaun Watson, gave up a ton of draft picks. We are going in reverse at a high speed. We have to fix this. And fixing this means something more than trading for Kenny Pickett. So you got to take a quarterback, and that's going to be Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. We just talked about him a moment ago. Balled out at Jackson State, got to Colorado in 2023. Balled out there the last 2 years. The difference between him and Cam Ward for me, Jordan, is that Cam's a little taller, a bigger arm, a little better athlete in space. And that's not to take anything from Shedeur, because he can do those things, just not quite at the physical level that Cam Ward can. But Shedeur is one of the best deep ball throwers, if not the best deep ball thrower in this draft class. And like Cam, he's got to get better at playing on time and not trying to play hero ball. But that's the same thing we said a year ago about Caleb Williams and Drake May. And we saw them make that progress their rookie season at different speeds, but I think in the right system. And the Browns isn't necessarily the right system, but I think head coach Kevin Stefanski is. You can see a young quarterback have success if you surround him with players. Myles Garrett's back in Cleveland, so he's going to do all he can to help that team turn the corner. And if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. So Shedeur gives Cleveland that chance.
Yeah, and here's the thing, too. When you look at Shedeur Sanders, you can just cut the tape on in the fourth quarter, because that's where he shines. And I'm talking about end-of-game situations, backed up offense, red zone offense, 2-minute offense, need to have his situations. To me, that sounds like an NFL quarterback, and he's done this for 4 years. If you go back to the first 2 years at Jackson State, he was putting together highlight film type quality appearances in these end-of-game need-to-have his situations in the biggest of games, the biggest of spotlights, and he is more capable of handling that spotlight more so than anyone, regardless of position, in his draft class.
All right, so 2 of the best quarterbacks off the board, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Let's go ahead, Emory, and get to the Giants here that still need quarterbacks, right? They have a veteran now who can help them win games now, but we need a rookie of the future. What do you have them doing at 3 with both Cam Ward and Shedeur off the board here?
Well, if you're reading between the lines, Jordan and Ryan, The reason why they went ahead and doubled up on quarterbacks because they knew Shedeur Sanders wasn't going to get past 2 with the Cleveland Browns. So they have to take the best player available, and the best football player in this draft is Travis Hunter. He could be a first-round pick as a cornerback and also as a wide receiver, and he helps the Giants immediately on both sides of the ball for whoever's going to be back there at quarterback, whether it's America's quarterback, Jameis Winston, or Russell Wilson. He gives them a bona fide game breaker outside of Malik Neighbors. And on defense, he's someone that is your best ball hawk. And if you're a quarterback throwing toward Travis Hunter, you're stupid. Why? Because you're throwing to a wide receiver. He's going to catch the football better than the guy that you're throwing it to. So that's why I love this pick. It helps him on both sides of the ball. And maybe the Giants can get their quarterback trading back into this mock draft.
So, Jordan, my top 100 came out earlier today, and I'm sure you've been poring over it. You would notice that Travis Hunter was number 1 because he is the best player in this draft class. So that would make sense that if he's available at 3 and you have him at 1, you take him and you don't overthink it. The issue is where does he end up playing? I think primarily you start him on defense, and some teams feel differently. The Browns have come out and said they like him as a wide receiver. But wherever you put him, you have a package of plays for him on the other side of the ball. You can even let him return because he can help you in all 3 phases. And the only issue is that can you keep him healthy? Because if he's on the field, he's going to be the best athlete on the field, whether that's in New York or any other team that's lucky enough to have him fall to him.
Yeah, nothing that he's not used to, right? Giants fans would have a big smile on their face if that comes to fruition. We'll wait and see. Ryan, let's get to 4 here. Walk us through your prediction.
Yeah, it's the New England Patriots. Producer Boney, Pats fan, not happy about this pick. I don't care because Producer Boney doesn't work in the front office in New England. They need offensive line help, specifically tackle help, and it's going to be Will Campbell. I know Producer Boney, he has short arms. He started in the SEC as a freshman against some of the best players on planet Earth. He was really good against those players. Those same players now play in the NFL, so it stands to reason that he will be fine. Now, if you want to play him at guard in year 1 or year 2 or kick him to the right side, that's your choice. But Vidarian Lowe, the left tackle at New England, struggled last year. He's in the final year of his deal as we sit here, and I'm assuming he's not going to be the long-term plans. Now, you could certainly make a case for Abdul Carter here, and I would listen to that case and probably believe you if you wanted to draft him. But they've drafted the last few years, New England Patriots, a ton of interior offensive linemen, and that's great. But at some point, Jordan, you got to take some offensive tackles. I'm taking Will Campbell here, and Drake May will be ecstatic about that development.
Yeah, it's going to be an arm wrestling match on whether or not you get to choose Will Campbell or Abdul Carter. Let's say you went out and choose the left tackle for your franchise quarterback in Drake May.
All right, so both of you mentioned the wingspan, the arm length. We've heard it multiple times. It's been a topic of discussion. People are all of a sudden really wanting to make this a thing, but this is actually what Will had to say about it when he was asked at his pro day. Take a listen.
For 2 years, nobody had any measurements on me, and nobody said anything about my play. So now all of a sudden, an arm length decides if I'm a good player or not. I think it's BS.
All right. With that kind of being said, Emory loves this. Your reaction to that, Emory?
Awesome. Because, again, it doesn't matter until it matters. Just like Mike Tyson, he was outreached by every opponent he faced. But what happened? He knocked him out. So I don't care. Unless you have long arms and can't get the guy on, get your hands on him quickly, your long arms don't matter. I like how he plays with his limitations because he's been excellent.
I love him already. Emory, let's go get to Jacksonville here, who holds the 5th overall pick. Big need, as we know, is that interior defensive line. Do you have them addressing that in the draft in the 1st round?
Yes, I do, Jordan. Mason Graham out of Michigan. I'm not listening to the people that say, well, he doesn't test well. He didn't really test athletically how you would think a guy in the top 5. I don't care. This guy could win at one of any technique up front. And so you find a way to put him where he's going to have the most success. And the guys that he went against at Michigan, where we saw him have a lot of success, they're going to be playing in the NFL. So I don't care how he tested the combine. This is a football player. Give me that 10 times out of 10.
Moving on here of Emory Hunt's mock draft. Ryan, let's get to the Raiders here at 6. And I took a little peek here. I love this pick.
Yeah, and that'll give Emory a confidence boost because he's going to need it as we get through this mock draft. I couldn't hold back from that, Jordan. But here's the thing. He has them taking Ted McMillan. I get it, man. Listen, Abdul Carter's still there, but they have Max Crosby. They drafted Tyree Wilson with a top 10 pick a few years ago. He's yet to max out his potential in part because of injuries. So at some point, you got to help out Eugene Cyril Smith III, and I think this is the way you do it. And the idea of Ted McMillan on the outside with Brock Bowers arguably the best player in the NFL. That's not a quarterback, Jordan, playing at tight end in year 2. I think that offense with Chip Kelly's new OC goes from being pretty stagnant in the last few years without a quarterback to being incredibly explosive in a division where you have to be able to score points.
Emory, who do you have the Jets picking here at 7? Obviously a big need is tackle here. Do you have them addressing that at this pick?
I'm pretty sure if Tyler Warren wanted to play tackle, he could be dominant at that too. He's the second best football player in this class. So give me Tyler Warren to help out that tight end, to help out future franchise quarterback Justin Fields, to help out that offense. I'm taking the second best football player in this class in Tyler Warren.
Yeah, that's a good question, though, Jordan. Do you want to get some offensive line help? A year ago, they got OT Ashton Jeanty, the left tackle out of Penn State, and he played on the right side at times, and he's going to be the left tackle this year. Armand Membou, the right tackle out of Missouri, has been a popular choice here. But Tyler Warren, outside of Cam Ward, I don't think any player helped themselves more throughout the 2024 season than Tyler Warren, because he went from late day 2 to early day 3 pick over the summer when we talked about him to a legit top 10 guy. So I'm not going to push back too hard on this because Justin Fields struggles with pushing the ball down the field consistently. So give him a guy who can catch the ball near the line of scrimmage or intermediate routes and let Tyler Warren do the heavy lifting. And that makes a ton of sense for me, even here this high in the draft.
Yeah, and I'm sure if Aaron Glenn asked him to, he would play tackle. But Warren, I love this pick, immediately adds value as a blocker in the run game and, of course, as a weapon outside. Before we hit a break, let's get to the Panthers here, who are selecting at 8. Ryan, who's next off the board?
Jordan, I am sprinting to the podium to turn in this name. I'm taking Abdul Carter. I'm going to be ecstatic. They moved on from Brian Burns, sent him to New York. They need desperately to get better at the edge rush position, and I love the idea of Abdul Carter somehow lasting this far into the draft because he is number 2 on my board, and he could go first overall, and no one would bat an eye. So Abdul Carter is an absolute steal here. Only been playing edge rush for 1 year after moving from the off-ball linebacker position. Wearing that number 11 makes you think of Micah Parsons. If you get anything like Micah Parsons in Carolina, you got to be pumped.
You know how NFL teams are creatures of habit, right? And we just can't keep letting Abdul Carter slide here by not working out, having an injury and played through with the shoulder, then comes to find out it was another injury at the combine. I think he's the one that takes a small slide on draft day. That's how he ends up in Carolina.
I don't have any pushback so far. Emory Hunt is looking good for picks 1 through 8 in the upcoming 2025 NFL Draft. In our latest mock draft, according to our own Emory Hunt, here is a recap of picks 1 through 8, back-to-back quarterback selections at 1 and 2. The two-way star out of Colorado, Travis Hunter, heading to the New York Giants. And then, what a steal, as Ryan Wilson said, Abdul Carter, the edge out of Penn State, heading to Carolina. Quick break for us, but when we return, some big names already off the board, but plenty of talented no names are still available, like that guy, Ashton Jeanty. Where is he headed? Our Mock Draft Monday continues next. Stay with us. Welcome back to HQ Spotlight here on CBS Sports Network. Our Mock Draft Monday continues with Emory Hunt and Ryan Wilson. I'm Jordan Giorgio. Guys, we pick it up with the 9th pick in the NFL Draft here. Emory, floor is yours. What's happening here at 9?
Well, the Saints are looking at, hey, we got to continue to make $20 stretch, right? Because the Saints are always over the cap. So we need more capital, cheap labor in terms of draft picks. So we're going to trade this pick with the Dallas Cowboys because they know Chicago is sitting there chomping at the bit. So Dallas makes a move, goes up to trade with New Orleans. We'll figure out the considerations afterwards. And they get Ashton Jeanty, the first running back off the board, and they get themselves a bell cow at the position, literally, who plays a lot like, stylistically, like Emmitt Smith. So I love this pick and trade for the Dallas Cowboys.
I love Ashton Jeanty. He is a fantastic football player. The funny thing is, and Jordan, this is the most Dallas Cowboys thing ever, they could have stayed put and still gotten Ashton Jeanty at 12. But they're like, yeah, you know what? Jerry's like, let's do it and see what happens. So congratulations, you got your guy. You lost a few draft picks in the process, but he will he will electrify that offense with his high-powered play coming out of the backfield.
Most definitely, and deserves to be the first running back off the board. Ryan, let's go ahead and get to 10 here. You have another trade happening. Walk us through it.
Yeah, Emory's going to have the Colts trading up with Chicago. And Mr. Colston Loveland is coming off the board, and I actually love that Because here's the thing. Shane Steichen talked about this also today at the owners' meetings. Anthony Richardson needs to improve his completion percentage. And the best way to help you do that, we talked about it a moment ago with Justin Fields and Tyler Warren with the Jets, is to get an athletic, playmaking tight end that can win at all three levels, and that's Colston Loveland. And he runs routes like a big wide receiver. He's fast. He's physical. He can run through arm tackles. And if you're Anthony Richardson, just put the ball in his hands 3, 4, 5 yards from the line of scrimmage and let Colston do the rest, because that's basically what he had to do the last 2 years at Michigan. So I actually like this pick a lot. You could consider interior offensive line here. If Emory had gone with Tyler Booker out of Alabama, I would have been ecstatic about that. But I'm not going to be at all upset about the idea of Colston Loveland helping Anthony Richardson try to turn the corner in year 3.
Makes all the sense of the world. Working our way through our own Emory Hunt's mock draft. Let's go ahead and get to pick 11. Emory, the floor is yours as the 49ers are on the clock.
When the 49ers were playing for Super Bowls and contending for Super Bowls, Jordan and Ryan, they were menacing on defense. They got to get back to that. Shemar Stewart out of Texas A&M, I think, would be perfect in San Francisco. I compare his situation to Rashawn Gary, where the sum of the parts don't equal up to the productivity out there on the field. But I do feel like you get a pro coach, get him in a pro situation, they'll maximize his true athletic talents, and we'll see him be a much better pro than he was in college.
All right, Ryan, pick 12 on deck here. Saints on the clock. Who's headed to New Orleans?
Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas, and this is another fantastic pick. Yeah. He is my OT1 on my big board. I think he's incredibly athletic. Last year, 9 offensive linemen went in the first round, Jordan, and Kelvin would probably slot in 6th or 7th, maybe even a little lower than that. That's how good last year's group was. But to get him here in the middle of the first round, if you're the Saints, with new coach Kellen Moore, Derek Carr trying to sort of have a resurgence. He struggled a little bit last year with injuries and consistency. And Trevor Penning hasn't played well, and that's just a reality. So Kelvin Banks Jr. can come in. He can play on the right side. He can play on the left side. He can play wherever you need him to play. Mm-hmm. He's that good an athlete, and I think he is a day one starter and feels like pretty much a steal here in the middle of round 1.
Oh, 100%. With 3 years of starting experience under his belt, will provide an immediate impact. I'm glad you mentioned that. Emory, at 13, the Miami Dolphins are on the clock. Who are you rolling with here?
Man, let me check what Tyreek Hill tweets about so I can make a better choice. But I like Will Johnson here, the corner. I think people forgot how good this dude is and how good he was at Michigan. And I feel like he pairs up perfectly with Jalen Ramsey. Give them another long, tall corner that can take the ball away.
All right, let's keep it rolling here with our own Emory Hunt's mock draft. Let's go ahead and get to 14, where the Bears are up. Ryan, who you got?
This is how you know Emory is a running back through and through. He's got Omarion Hampton going 14. I love Omarion Hampton. He's 41 on my big board, if I can recall correctly. I talked about him earlier in HQ. He's a shade under 6 feet, 220, runs in the 4.4s, has track speed. He can do everything you want a running back to do in today's NFL, including catch passes and block. 14 feels rich, but here's the thing. If you're Ben Johnson, the new coach of Chicago, and you're trying to fix that offense, which needs a lot of fixing, you've gone out and signed a ton of offensive linemen on the interior to help Caleb Williams. You could perhaps go wide receiver if you wanted to, or maybe bolster the rest of the offensive line, even get edge rush help from Montez Sweat. But look, this is how this offense is going to go, and we've seen Ben Johnson with a good offensive line and a stout running game get the most out of his quarterback in Detroit. And I love Jared Goff, but I think we can all agree that Caleb Williams has a little more upside long-term. And getting a running game to pair with Caleb going into year 2, I understand why you would do that here. 14 feels a little rich, but all the time we draft guys that too high or too low, and it turns out 2 or 3 years from now, we're like, oh, yeah, that guy was better than we thought he was.
Yeah, especially if people talk about taking Jeanty earlier in the draft with Chicago. Why not trade back, acquire more assets, and get a guy that gives you a little bit more explosiveness from the position that pairs up perfectly with what you already have in DeAndre Swift, who's probably on the last year of his deal, whatnot. But now you have a true explosive, dynamic 1-2 punch, and we've seen them do this before in Detroit with Gibbs and Montgomery. So I like this fit for Chicago.
All right, coming right back to you here, Emory, at 15. Falcons pick up a big name out of Georgia. Why does edge Mykel Williams work here, though? 1,
they need an edge. That's number 1. And 2, when you look at these Georgia edge players, just ignore their stats, right? Because they're playing in their defense specifically for what they need to do to win on Saturday. But their skill set translates better to the NFL and being way more productive than they were in college. So I like this fit for Atlanta because it's a need, and it's a very good football player in Mykel Williams, whose upside is tremendous.
Yeah, he's about 264. I think he ran in the 4.7s at his pro day, Jordan, and he's only going to get better. He's scratching the surface. Talked to him at the combine, and he basically said, yeah, I'm not even close to where I'm going to be long term, which would be a scary proposition, whether he's in Atlanta or somewhere else. And I like him a lot to Travon Walker in terms of the athlete coming out of Georgia. The difference is that Travon Walker was drafted first overall and probably overdrafted, and he's sort of fulfilling that promise now the last few years with double-digit sacks. I think that's the type of player Mykel Williams can be without the pressure of being the first overall pick. If he goes in the middle of the first round, can be a designated pass rusher early on and really show what kind of player he is years 2, 3, and 4, because athletically there are a few people that can do the things he does.
Oh, the movers don't have to go far for Mykel Williams. Ryan, the Cardinals next on the clock here at 16.
Yeah, they're taking Walter Nolen out of Ole Miss. And look, the reality is this. There may be some off-field concerns teams have with Walter Nolen, but on the field, he is a top 15 pick all day long. And I say that with the understanding that this defensive line class and edge rush class is one of the best I've seen this century, and that's not even an exaggeration. Also, the Cardinals need help on the interior. They drafted Darius Robinson last year, the 275, 280-pound edge rusher who battled injuries. You pair him with someone like Walter Nolen, then you have two insanely athletic, strong defensive linemen to get after it in the NFC West. And Walter Nolen is as special as they come athletically. And I say that understanding, Emory, that I just said basically the same thing about Mykel Williams out of Georgia.
You know what's funny, though, is the fact that the Cardinals are still trying to replace what they lost in Zach Allen. I don't think they know what they had in Zach Allen when he was coming out of Boston College, who could play across the front. You see him now doing great things in Denver. This gives them another versatile piece to go with a hopefully healthy Darius Robinson, because we remember, Ryan, how much he starred down at the Senior Bowl the previous year. Now you got two guys that can be versatile across that front seven. That defense looks a lot scarier now with Walter Nolen.
All right, gentlemen, stay put. We're just getting started with Emory Hunt's mock draft on this mock draft Monday. Here's a recap of picks 9 through 16. Saints trading their 9th pick with the Cowboys, who move up to select this guy, Ashton Jeanty, the first running back off the board. Also, the Colts trading up to get tight end out of Michigan, Colston Loveland, a great get for Anthony Richardson. And Mykel Williams out of Georgia, a game wrecker. Doesn't have to go far, as Emory has him staying put in Atlanta. A quick break for us, but when we return, after making a splash and picking up Cooper Kupp in free agency, what makes sense for the Seattle Seahawks in this year's draft in the first round? Could they add another offensive weapon and possibly Missouri's Luther Burden? We tell you on the other side. Welcome back to HQ Spotlight here on CBS Sports Network. Our mock draft Monday continues with Emory Hunt and Ryan Wilson. I'm Jordan Giorgio. We pick it up, gentlemen, at pick 17 in the first round. Emory, who do you have the Bengals taking?
Man, any offensive lineman that's left on the board, like, give them to Cincinnati, because we've seen them do a great job in drafting everything but offensive lineman. They can't miss with this one here. And Armand Membou out of Missouri, I think he is a plug-and-play guy. Keep Joe Burrow upright. Home run pick for Cincinnati.
I love Armand Membou, and he's gotten some pushback from some of our colleagues. Jordan, I won't name names, but he's only 20 years old. He has long arms. He's incredibly athletic. I thought he played well against Texas A&M and South Carolina, two teams with about 8 guys along the defensive line that are going to get drafted. And we've seen Joe Burrow take beating after beating, season after season. If you give him even a half a second more time in the pocket, that team might have won the Super Bowl last year. Forget about missing the playoffs. So I'm with Emory, bolster the offensive line. It sounds like they're trying to get Trey Henderson back, so edge rush may not be as big a need as we sit here, but OL is not a bad way to go when you're talking about protecting Joe Burrow. All
right, the Bengals prioritize protecting Joe Burrow. It just seems like a layup, right? Like, don't mess it up, right? Let's go ahead and get to 18 now. The Seahawks on deck here, Ryan. What makes sense here for Seattle after, of course, making a big splash, getting Cooper Kupp in free agency?
Right, and they traded DK Metcalf to the Steelers. They moved on from Tyler Lockett, and even though they have Cooper Kupp and they signed MVS and they signed everyone's favorite wide receiver, River Craycroft, they also need to add Luther Burden III out of Missouri. And here's the thing about Luther Burden III, who plays in the slot, but he can play outside. He has return ability, 6 feet, 190 and change, ran in the 4.4s. The quarterback play last year was sporadic, I will call it, and that's in part because Brady Cook was banged up. I mean, he's a tough young man, but he wasn't nearly 100%, and Burden's productivity struggled as a result. If you're going to try to replicate what Sam Darnold had in Minnesota, get him some playmakers down the field. And I think that Luther Burden goes a long way in helping not only Jackson Smith-Njigba, but also Sam Darnold in his new home in the Pacific Northwest.
And I'm not comparing the two situations, Ryan, but this will give him a Jordan Jefferson and what he had out there in Minnesota, right? Because it kind of helps give you two legit studs that can catch and run, get the ball out of your hands quickly, and go make things happen after the catch. That's why I love Luther Burden here in Seattle.
All right, Emory, we're working our way down your mock draft, and we find ourselves at 19, the Buccaneers on the clock. Where are you leaning with this pick?
I almost put this guy earlier in the mock draft, but I kind of purposely let it fall to Tampa because it's such a great fit, and that's Jihaad Campbell out of Alabama. This guy is super explosive, super athletic, and the fact that he can get from the line of scrimmage back deep to his zone drops within the blink of an eye, that's the type of guy that puts a lot of strain on your passing offense. I love this fit right here for Tampa Bay.
All right, Ryan, let's get to 20 here. Who does Emory have packing their bags on the way to Denver?
I'll reiterate what I said earlier. Pick 14, Jordan. You know that Emory's a running back because he has Trey Henderson going here. Look, running back is a huge need. I'm not going to take my running back 3 here, but that's what Emory did. And Emory is the biggest advocate for running backs, perhaps on anyone on planet Earth. So I give him credit for that. They also have needed wide receiver, so I might have considered Matthew Golden. But here's the thing about Trey Henderson. That dude can play. And I think he's probably going to end up going in the second round. So maybe he goes 10 or 15 picks higher here in Emory's mock draft. At the end of the day, maybe that doesn't matter. But you get some help for a young quarterback in Bo Nix. The tight ends are off the board, so you're not going to get those guys. And they would make a ton of sense here as well. And Trey Henderson has track speed. He ran in the 4.4s of the combine. He plays that fast. He's built low to the ground. He's an asset as a receiver, and he will block, and he had a really good pro day last week in Columbus, Ohio. So all those things taken together, I understand the fit in terms of what the Broncos need to help their quarterback. I don't know if I would take him quite this high, but, you know, Emory's got to rep his guys.
Listen, I'm going to tell you what Sean Payton's going to do. He's going to pound a plenty pack of juicy fruit, going to look up at that draft board, and go and select TreVeyon Henderson because I've seen him do it before. I've seen him go up there and take Reggie Bush #2. I've seen him take Mark Ingram in the first round. He is not shy about taking a running back at America's position in the first round.
I am curious to see if we do see 3 running backs go in just the first 20 picks. But I'm riding with you here, Ryan. Names like Matthew Golden, you got Emeka Egbuka still on the board. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, Emory. We'll wait and see. Let's get to 21. The Steelers on deck. Emory, you have them selecting quarterback Jalen Milroe, but just how realistic is that move to happening?
I mean, they took Kenny Pickett, and that was like, you got to be kidding me, right?
That's true.
So Milroe is a much better player than Kenny Pickett. And this, to me, was a pick because the Giants, I feel like, would be trading back into the first round to get a quarterback, one they could sit behind a Russell Wilson and a Jameis Winston. That fits Jalen Milroe because he needs time to groom and develop. So the Steelers just grabbing the talent right now in the first round and not even waiting for the chance to try to get somebody in round 2. They can get a veteran, a stopgap. We've seen Mike Tomlin win with anybody out there at quarterback to get to 9 wins or to get them to the playoffs. But Milroe, to me, smart kid, academic Heisman, got better every year at Alabama. They broke in a new offense this season with Kalen DeBoer, so that's why the turnovers were where they were. But the touchdowns and the production was still there. So he is trending in the right direction. I think Mike Tomlin says, you know what, I'm going to grab the talent right now and groom him for later.
Jordan, you're here. This is the longest that Emory's talked because he doesn't want me to have to come back and explain to him the reality of what the real world is going to look like.
Give it to him, Ryan.
Look,
just let it rip.
He is an academic All-American. He is incredibly smart. He did not get better last year. That's the reality. And I was hoping to see more in terms of what Kalen DeBoer got out of Michael Penix Jr. They're 2 years together at Washington than what I saw from Jalen Milroe. And look, I think Jalen Milroe, obviously a fantastic athlete. He can throw the ball down the field. He can throw the ball out of the stadium. The issue is the touching those balls. And Emory and I talked about exactly that during the Senior Bowl practice because we saw the same thing. And my frustration is this, Jordan. If you're going to take Jalen Milroe here at 21, Just re-sign Justin Fields when you have the opportunity. It only costs you $10 million a year. They don't have a second-round pick because they traded for DK Metcalf. I'm angry that they didn't give up a third-round pick for Geno Smith that the Raiders got. So I wouldn't compound the problem. And the last thing I'll say is this, Jordan. Emory saying that Jalen Milroe is better than Kenny Pickett is like saying Emory can outrun my grandma. Yeah, I hope you can, because if you can't, then something's gone horribly wrong.
My pushback comes from this maybe not being a smart move, because it's not certain that I think Jalen Milroe is going to be a guy that goes day one, because they might be able to pick him up a little bit later, Ryan. I don't know. What do you think?
And that's the other thing. They have a ton of need. Like, if they drafted a defensive tackle here like a Kenneth Grant,
yeah,
I could get behind that. We've talked about Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka for sure, and not having that second-round pick compounds things, but it also feeds a sense of urgency that Emory's talking about, and that's why they overdrafted Kenny Pickett back in 2022.
Yeah. All right, we will leave it there. A little pushback. Sorry about that, Emory Hunt. Ryan, at 22, the Chargers are rolling with who?
All right, now we're back on schedule here,
Yes.
because this is one of my favorite guys, Jahdae Barron out of Texas. 4.39. He can play corner. He can play slot. He can play safety. We talked to him at the combine, and I was ready to run through a wall. Me and my grandma both, after talking to him, he got us so pumped up to play football. And I think he feels exactly like, even though he didn't go to Michigan, exactly like a Jim Harbaugh-type player. And he's going to bring that heat day one to that secondary. And you talk about him and Derwin James on the same field together, and now you're suddenly cooking with gas in a division where you have to have defensive backs to go up against Patrick Mahomes and now Geno Smith.
Back to reality. Let's keep it going. Emory Hunt at 23. Who's the newest cheesehead?
If you talk to Packer fans that follow the draft and follow their team, they get so specific in what they feel like they need. We need a reserve right guard. That tells me your team is stacked on both sides of the ball. So you need the best player available. You're willing to take a chance on Shavon Revel out of East Carolina. This guy has legitimate ball skills, instincts, explosiveness, everything that you want, because if he was 100% healthy from the ACL, he would have gone way higher in this draft. So getting him here and being able to bring him along slowly is a win-win for Green Bay.
All right, lastly here, before we hit a quick break, at 24, the new member of the Minnesota Vikings, according to Emory Hunt, Ryan, is...
Mason Graham's teammate at Michigan, Kenneth Grant. And Kenneth Grant outweighs Mason probably by about 30 pounds, a defensive lineman. But he somehow played in Mason's shadow. That's how explosive Mason was. But if Kenneth Grant played on any other team in the country, we'd be talking about him solely, because he was so dominant. Forget that he's 330. He moves like he's about 265 in terms of his twitch getting off the ball. Obviously plays with a ton of strength. Look, they have other needs in Minnesota, no doubt about it. They could have gone with offensive line here. That would have certainly been an issue. Shavon Revel, just went off the board. They need help at cornerback, and obviously Brian Flores would have loved to have gotten some help in the secondary. Maybe even Malachi Starks could be a consideration here, but I don't think you're going to pass on someone who could end up being a top 15 player in Kenneth Grant, Jordan.
All right, we end here on a high note at 24. We love it, Emory Hunt. Here is a look of the recap of picks 17 through 24, according to our own Emory Hunt's latest NFL mock draft. Luther Burden off the board, headed to the Seattle Seahawks. The wide receiver out of Missouri. And then the big question mark, we'll see what happens here. But we wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers go ahead and take a quarterback in Jalen Milroe. Quick break for us. Some teams with later picks in the first round need some help on the defensive side of the ball. So where are some of the top guys like Tennessee's James Pierce and Marshall's Mike Green headed? The guys tell you next. Home stretch here on HQ Spotlight. It's Mock Draft Monday. Emory Hunt and Ryan Wilson with us, and we're picking up our Mock Draft Monday with pick 25. Emory, who do you have the Texans selecting?
I almost went offensive line here, and I probably should have, but at the end of the day, it's a defensive head coach, and he loves defensive players that can really get up and go, and I went with Jalen Walker out of Georgia, another guy that I can see as an old-school Sam backer, but also can play anywhere across that second level. I like him as an inside backer within this defense for the Houston Texans.
All right, second Georgia Bulldog going in the first round. Good news there. Ryan, let's go ahead and get to 26 here. The Rams, as we know, bringing back Matthew Stafford. Do you have them picking up another offensive weapon here, or what's the deal?
I do not. On behalf of Emory Hunt, I am taking Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback out of Notre Dame. I actually like this pick. He had a hip injury that shortened his season last fall, and we sort of forgot about him during the pre-draft process. But when he's healthy, he's one of the best cornerbacks in college football. And I don't know if he finds his way into the first round. Had he been completely healthy and took part in all the pre-draft process, perhaps. But I think he's a top 50 guy if he's healthy. And you're going to get a steal if you get him at the bottom of the first round in this mock draft, or maybe in reality in round 2. And more importantly, the Rams need help in the secondary. And I think that Benjamin Morrison goes a long way in helping him, that he's long and physical, has ball skills, all the things that certainly come into play when you play in that division.
All right, Emory, let's get to 27. The Ravens are on deck. What makes the most sense here according to your mock draft?
Outside of blowing off every toe that they have on their feet because of how they play in the playoffs, they quietly lost because they couldn't really consistently get to the quarterback. Well, here's James Pierce out of Tennessee to help rectify that situation. Someone that still, even though he's played a lot of football, he still has some rawness and upside within his game in terms of how he gets to the quarterback. I think they'll teach him up and coach him up out there in Baltimore. He'll be a fantastic pro.
It's the Detroit Lions' time to shine here, Ryan, at 28. Who does Emory have headed to Motor City, and do you like the pick?
I love the pick. Alabama guard Tyler Booker. He could go 15 picks higher than this if we're being honest. He is so good. I know he didn't test well. I don't care. Watch him play. He is an absolute earth mover. He's great in pass protection. He feels like a Detroit Lion. He feels like a Dan Campbell type guy that's going to come in and bite off kneecaps or whatever else is that he does. Works at Applebee's part-time. I love Tyler Booker here. And like I said, if he goes higher than this, substantially higher than this, sign me up for that as well.
All right, Emory, at 29, Washington Commanders have made a bunch of moves so far this free agency and offseason. What do they do with their first pick in the NFL draft?
Pairing Dan Campbell with a one-dimensional rusher sounds like Micah Parsons, right? But I love Mike Green here out of Marshall, coming out of the Sun Best Conference. Reason being, he is bringing so much power off the edge. He's a heavy-handed puncher like the great late George Foreman. Once he put those paws on you, that's a wrap. And I think they can use someone to collapse from the edge coming off the side of the defense that helps just bolster what we saw last year, that effort on that side of the ball.
Yeah, no one plays harder play in and play out than Mike Green. And he's from Lafayette High School in Williamsburg, Virginia, Jordan. Also the same high school as Lawrence Taylor, Hall of Famer and perhaps one of the best edge rushers and football players in NFL history. And Mike Green told us at the Senior Bowl that LT has a picture up in the high school, and he wants to get his picture next to LT. So he's about to get his start here when he finds his way into the first round.
How cool is that? I love that fact. We'll see if he's a hometown hero headed to the nation's capital. Ryan, nearing the end of the first round, Bills will be up at 30. Who does Emory have them picking up here?
Oregon defensive lineman Derrick Harmon, and Derrick Harmon does everything you want him to do. His nickname might as well be textbook because he's not incredibly flashy, and you could argue that sometimes he's played out of position at Oregon, but you pair him next to Chris Jones, and you think he's going to learn quickly on the job. I describe Derrick Harmon as sort of a slow burn in that you have to watch a lot of him to see all the little things he does nuance-wise and how good he is technically. I think he's going to continue to improve, and while he's not as flashy as some of the other defensive linemen or edge rushers in this draft class, he's a first-round talent. And again, if you can do everything and do it at a high level, that makes it a lot easier to get you on the field first, second, or third down.
Bills fans just upset with you because you completely just missed their pick, Ryan, at 31.
Oh, no, I did Emory's pick.
You just need to talk about the Chiefs. We get it, priority. Bills fans absolutely sick of it. So, Emory, tell us who you have the Bills picking up here, and tell us why it is Trey Amos.
Well, it's a deep cut, Jordan, and also Ryan, because if you read between the lines, not only did I get 3 running backs in, but I got a former Raging Cajun in the mock draft, too. Trey Amos was with us for the first 2 years of his career. I got to start throwing my weight around to get that NIL up. You know what I'm saying? So I need CBS to come help me out with that. So Trey Amos, long corner, athletic, good ball skills, a technician. Everything that he does is A+. And so getting another outstanding corner for Buffalo, I know they whiffed on Kaiir Elam, who I was a big fan of coming out of Florida. They nailed Christian Benford out of Villanova, late round pick. So they get another swing at bat here with Trey Amos out of Ole Miss.
Ryan, are we sick of the bias here at this point? I mean, we've 31 picks in. Like, what do you have to say about that one?
Yeah, that's on me. And I knew subconsciously, I guess, that Emory wanted to talk about Louisiana. Perhaps I thought he'd get a running back coming. He got a running back mentioned in there. So he checked all the boxes.
He did.
Derrick Harmon does, in fact, go at 31 to the Kansas City Chiefs. I explained why a moment ago. I do like the idea of him pairing next to Chris Jones. Apologies to Trey Amos. I didn't mean to leave you hanging like that, Trey. I think you're a fantastic football player. Fun fact from Trey, Jackson Dart told us at the Combine that the best cornerback he faced in the SEC was his teammate Trey Amos, and I think he is a first-round talent, long, physical, fast, and I would imagine he left the Raging Cajuns because people wouldn't quit talking about Emory Hunt, so he had to get up out of there and make his way to Oxford, Mississippi.
Oh, Emory, I'll let you respond to your pick, what you were going to say about the Chiefs selecting defensive lineman Derrick Harmon here.
No, Ryan laid it out perfectly. You pair someone up next to Chris Jones because they need help along that defensive line.
All right, let's go ahead and round out the first round with pick 32. Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles, select who, Ryan?
Let me check my notes, Jordan, make sure I'm on script here. Oh, yes, Josh Simmons, left tackle out of Ohio State, transferred from San Diego State. Didn't work out last week at the Pro Day for Ohio State because he's coming off a knee injury he suffered in mid-October against Oregon. So we didn't get to see him against some of the top-flight competition. But he told me that he was happy to go to Ohio State because he got to play that competition. He's going to be a first-round pick. Might be the best offensive lineman in this class.
All right, gentlemen. Great work, as always. Ryan Wilson losing it a bit, but apologies. We are 24 days away from the NFL draft. Here is a look at the picks 25 through 32.